Today we're going to be checking out the Epson QL7000 4K laser projector. This is Epson's flagship Q-series projector, and what makes it so compelling is it's rated at 10,000 ISO lumens. As comparison, the JVC's flagship, the NZ900, is 3,300 lumens, and they're roughly the same price. Now this is a lot bigger than Epson's other projectors like the QB1000 or the previous Gen 6050. It measures 22.4 inches in width by 22.4 inches in depth by 7.5 inches in height, and it weighs 46.5 pounds. As for connections, it's got two HDMI 2.1 inputs, LAN and USB-ins, a service port, a 3.5mm audio output, an RS-232, and the controls are located on the back as well. One very interesting thing is that the Epson does offer different interchangeable lenses for your specific installation. So you can get long throw lenses, short throw lenses, and everything in between. However, there is no anamorphic lens, which seems like a missed opportunity for those with scope screens. Now this is still a pixel shifting projector, so natively it's 1080p. But it can pixel shift up to 4K for 8.29 million pixels on screen. It is a laser projector with laser life up to 20,000 hours, and as mentioned before, it's spec'd at 10,000 ISO lumens with a contrast ratio up to and over 5 million to 1 using dynamic contrast. Let's go ahead and take a quick peek at some of the projector settings. So the first section is going to be the image settings. So the options we have are light output. Right now I've got it at 30%, which is as low as it's going to go. And as you can see, as we go up, this projector gets ridiculously bright. So it goes from 30% to 100%. But for this section here, we're just going to go at 30%. For color modes, we've got dynamic, vivid, cinema, and then under natural, which natural is supposed to be the most accurate out of the box, or so I'm told. And then we have sliders for brightness, contrast, saturation, tint, and then sharpness. We have your standard sharpness settings, thin line, and then thick line enhancement. For everything in this video, I'm going to keep all these settings off. We've got your white balance settings, so if you do have the appropriate measurement tools, you can go in and do any kind of correction or calibration measurements. Full disclosure, I'm not a professional calibrator, so I'm only going to be using the natural setting in this video. Under image enhancement, we've got a few different preset modes here. You can change the frame interpolation, super resolution. I'm going to keep all these at 0 as well. Auto contrast enhancer, and then you can reset. Under advanced, we've got your scene adaptive gamma. You've got all the way from a 0 up to a +20. Under your gamma curves, we've got all the way down from a 2.7 all the way to a 1.7. Then you can do custom curve as well. Then here again, you can also change your RGB CMYM. So if you have the appropriate gear, you can change that there. For dynamic contrast, we've got on or off. We got response speed, normal or high. And then for black level, you've got 0 to 20%. We've got lights out control. We can turn this on or off. You can control the line out signal level from 0 to 5%, lights out timer 0 to 10 seconds, and then you can reset all. Next section is signal. Here we've got your different aspect ratio settings. We've got full zoom, anamorphic wide, or horizontal squeeze if you have the appropriate anamorphic lenses. We've got blanking, color space, we've got auto 709 or 2020. Under dynamic range, we've got auto SDR, HDR10, HLG. Be easier just to put it on auto. And then the settings that are grayed out, if you turn dynamic tone mapping off, you can go ahead and set your target for HDR10 and also HLG. But if your tone mapping is turned on, you cannot access those settings. Then under advanced, we've got auto, limited, and full, your HDMI EDID, and then your image processing. We've got auto, fine, and then fast. So if you are a gamer, this could be useful for you. And then reset. Under settings, we've got a bunch of geometry correction here. I've got this perfectly squared up with my screen, but if not, we've got horizontal or vertical keystone correction. So if for some reason you cannot get your projector squared up with your screen, you can see here we have digital keystone correction. Obviously, this is not the best feature to use, as you will be effectively cutting into your usable pixels. So not such a good idea to use any of these settings, but if it's must, then these features are available. And then we have your vertical and then horizontal keystone and balance. For quick corner, you can see you can adjust these 4 different corners. So by picking a point, you can move those points inwards or upwards. So get a little bit more fine adjustment using the quick corner. Here we've got curved surface. So if we go into, let's say, point correction, let's go ahead and pick a point. So you can see I can just pinch in the outer left side of the screen. And then you can move these different points around. So if you are using this with, say, a curved screen and you have an anamorphic lens and you get that pin cushion distortion, you can go into this section here and kind of work that out. Then kind of the same thing, you have corner wall and then point correction, which is kind of the same thing as what we just did. And you can save that to memory. So you get a lot of fine adjustments in this geometry correction. For volume, if you have this hooked up to some external speakers through the 3.5mm jack in the back of the projector, you can adjust the volume here. If you've got HDMI link, you can lock the settings. Remote receiver on the front or back. We've got assignable user buttons for these 5 specific functions. You can do that for the 2 different buttons. We've got your test pattern, memory, content playback. By turning this on, you can adjust some of the settings within the projector through the web UI. I believe it will also play back AVI, MP4 files, also JPEG and picture file formats. I have not tried this, so I cannot say how well it works. And then you can reset all here. Under extended, we have different options for menu position. So you can pick where you want to direct the menu, but for us, we're going to keep it right in the center. We've got message position. So when the messages do pop up, you can select where that is located. Messages on or off, display the background black or blue, or you can display the logo. We got the startup screen, standby confirmation, error filter notice. If it gets too hot, that will pop on. Panel alignment. So if you are noticing anything is off, you're getting some kind of bleeding, you're just not getting a crisp image, you can go in here and either shift the whole panel or adjust the 4 corners. But everything is fine with this particular sample. And then we have your color uniformity alignment as well. And then we've got the OSD rotation. For users logo, you can upload your own logo if you want. Different projection settings. We've got front ceiling, rear ceiling. Different operational settings here. We got standby mode, communication on or off. So if you want to control this through an external control system, you can do that here by turning that on or off. Got your projector ID, language, and then reset. Got your network settings, your projector's info settings, reset all settings, and that is it for the projector's settings.
Let's kick this off with the horses from the Spears & Munsell disc. Since this projector is ridiculously bright, the 10,000 nit demo does look pretty blown out compared to the 600 and 2000 nit screens. The 4000 and 10,000 nit screens, if you look closely, you can faintly make out the trees in the background, so it's not 100% blowing everything out. As comparison, here's the same demo on the JVC NZ900 using their own tone mapping with the laser set on max. Clearly, the Epson is much brighter on max laser, and even at 30%, it's nearly as bright as the JVC on max. The JVC does handle these bright scenes a bit better, but the brightness on the Epson, it's just impressive. Now, if you're dropping this much on a projector, you're probably going to get some sort of video processor. By adding a Lumigen Radiance Pro to the Epson, you can recover a ton of detail that the Epson's tone mapping can't do on its own. It's not a necessary thing, but it definitely doesn't hurt. On these next demos, I have contrast enhancer, adaptive screen gamma, and dynamic contrast set to off in the first top left box. And then I set them up in 5, 10, and 20 increments in the other boxes. This way you can see a big enough difference between the different settings. Now this is a dark movie, and Epson projectors typically don't excel for black levels. But to my eyes, the difference between these intensely bright specular highlights and the darkest parts of the image really make it seem like the blacks are darker than what they actually are. As you work through the different combinations of settings and depending on your screen and screen size, you can squeeze out plenty of shadow detail while not overblowing the highlights too much. I think the 5% box is a nice middle ground, but there's no denying maxing out the settings is a real eye scorcher. Comparing it to the JVC on maximum laser output, I didn't think that there was a massive gap in black levels between the two to make me automatically dismiss the Epson like I would have with the older models. Sure, the JVC does have better black levels, but the peak highlights on every flash can literally make you close your eyes on the Epson. I've never once felt the JVC had that level of intensity. Now, don't get me wrong, the JVC is still impressive, it's just having these side by side, I think most folks would be more impressed by the Epson's brighter picture. Using those same settings, we've got another notoriously dark movie in The Batman. This movie does have slightly raised blacks by the way it was shot, but with lesser capable projectors, a lot of the shadow details will be a grayed out mess. I think the Epson did a great job using either one of these settings, or no settings at all. As for the different picture presets, the only presets that support full fade to black is dynamic. Vivid and cinema will drop down to near black while natural looks gray. The only issue I had with these fades is when the screen would start dimming down, it would slowly drop to a dark gray and then it would go dark completely, and just abruptly. So the transition to going completely black is not exactly smooth, and you may notice it. As for the pixel shifting, I think if you're already an Epson owner and you've got no problems on how it resolves 4K, I doubt you're going to have an issue with the 7000. I find that in my first row, which is about 10 feet from the screen, I can tell the difference between the JVC, which is native 4K, and the Epson. I found that the JVC and even the Sony that I have just has an overall smoothness to fine lines and edges that is crisper than the Epson. For movies that are shot on film or has a grainy look, I find native 4K projection resolves that grain with a tighter, more consistent look, whereas on the Epson it tends to look a bit more blotchy. Now if I move back to my second row, which is 16 feet from the screen, all of this becomes less noticeable. I think overall, with my time with the Epson and going back and forth comparing it to the JVC, the Epson reminded me of being in a Dolby Cinema with how insane it made HDR jump off the screen. I used to think 1800 lumens was more than enough till I saw 3300 lumens, and I thought that was an absolute eye burner and it would never need anything brighter, until I got the Epson in. This projector blew me away every time I turned it on. Sure, the black levels aren't JVC or even Sony dark, but the extra brightness would be more than enough to sway me over to Camp Epson. If you're a real stickler for black levels, then yes, you're gonna go over to JVC or Sony. Resolution-wise, I suppose that's gonna depend on how good your eyesight is. But for sheer HDR impact, having 10,000 lumens on tap really makes it hard to go back to anything else. And that does include the $30,000 JVC. So if you have $30,000 in spare change and extra for a lens, I think you'll be blown away at how good the QL7000 performs. Oh, and it is bright enough to use with the lights on. Well, thanks for watching, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you again in the next video.